Hello and welcome to the Church of Christ Bible Study Rewind, where we encapsulate what we went over in our last study Sunday morning for the Church of Christ. Now we're in this COVID lockdown, so we did not meet. However, we did meet over a Google Meet platform, and so we're just going to go over what we talked about during that Bible study. So we're in the book of Deuteronomy. We're going to cover chapter 10 and the first part of chapter 11. And if you want to get an overview of the book, you can find that at our YouTube and Facebook sites. So far, Moses is basically going over history and explaining what they should be learning from what they've witnessed. The people have had problems with following God and trusting God, most specifically having faith in God and understanding that God will do lots of things for you, but He expects things of us. And this has never changed, and we're going to get into a little bit about that. And we did talk extensively about the teachings that go on today within the Christian world that seems to have lost its way within that paradigm of obedience and its necessity, and something that every Christian should be looking for in their life. So there's history in these first 11 chapters. There is, in chapter 5, God goes over the 10 Commandments. And then in chapters 6 through 9, he describes Israel. And in chapter 9, it culminates with an accusation that they are stiff-necked, saying basically, you're really stubborn. You don't want me to lead you for some reason is kind of the message God is trying to get across to them. And you need to allow me to lead you and drive you into the direction I want you to go. And so in chapters 10 and 11, he's going to reiterate some more history, which basically emphasizes and focuses on his supreme authority and why it is that he's been doing for them what he's doing and how they are to respond. So in chapter 10, we're going to read verses 1 through 10, and then we'll get into the questions as to what the class got into. So it says, "At that time Jehovah said to me, cut out for yourself 2 tablets of stone like the first, and come up to me into the mountain, and you shall make for yourself an ark of wood." Now this is a continuation of where he left off in chapter 9, where he was at Mount Sinai, and the people disobeyed God, and he came down from the mountain and threw the tablets down and was very upset, and God was very upset with them as well. God wanted to wipe them out. However, Moses was able to reason with God, and God didn't do exactly what he said he was going to do, although he did execute justice, and there were consequences for what happened. "I shall write on the tablets the words which are on the first tablet, which you have broken, and you shall place them in the ark. I made an ark of acacia wood and cut out 2 tablets of stone, like the first, and went up into the mountain, and the 2 tablets were in my hand." This is Moses speaking about himself. "And he wrote on the tablets, according to the writing, the 10 Commandments, which Jehovah had spoken to you on the mountain, out of the midst of the fire in the day of the assembly. And Jehovah gave them to me. And I came down from the mountain, and put the tablets in the ark which I had made, and there they are, as Jehovah commanded me. And the sons of Israel pulled up stakes from Beeroth of the sons of Jachin to Mosera. Aaron died there, and he was buried there, and his son Eleazar was acting as priest in his place." That's a notable thing, because God wanted to destroy Aaron. "From there they pulled up stakes to Gogoda, and from Gogoda to Jabath, to a land of torrents of water." There must have been rivers there or something. "And at that time Jehovah separated the tribe of Levi to bear the ark of the covenant before Jehovah. to stand before Jehovah and to minister to him and bless his name until today. Therefore, Levi has no portion, nor inheritance with his brothers. Jehovah is his inheritance, according as Jehovah your God spoke to him. And I stayed in the mountain 40 days and 40 nights, as at the first. And Jehovah listened to me at that time also. Jehovah did not will to destroy you. So he's making reference again to his ability to reason with God. And God could have exacted his justice as he saw fit, but he didn't. He changed his mind and redid it a different way, and we'll get into that. So the question is, after Moses interceded, what did God do between verses 1 and 5? And why did God do this? And how does this parallel the work of Christ? And really, he most emphatically showed mercy to the people. And this is a call to his sense of pragmatic and sentimental sensibility. We'll get into what Moses pleads for the people. And this reveals to us what kind of God we have. Not that he is some sort of tyrant, again, but that he will listen to his people when they are passionately calling on him for whatever things they're looking for, as long as it's a holy endeavor. So I said he rewrote the 10 Commandments for Moses to take to the people. God was showing mercy on the people. God is just and requires an intercession for mercy. And this is what Moses did. Moses' intercession was based on a plea to God's mercy by pragmatic means. He basically says to them, look, if you wipe all the people out, all the other people in the land are going to blaspheme your name and say you brought all these people out here just to kill them. That was one of his arguments. And he also told them, look, these folks are your inheritance. They're your people. Jesus intercedes and pleads to God based on his own sacrifice. So when we fast forward to the sacrifice of Jesus, Jesus pleads for us before God, much like Moses did. And he appeals to God's sense of mercy. And at the same time, this is something that Moses could not do. Jesus satisfied himself the requirements for sin, which was blood. And so this is how Deuteronomy foreshadows what the Christ was going to do. And this is something a lot of people don't realize, that the Old Testament is really not an Old Testament. It's part of all the testimony of God for mankind to see. Moses simply could not do that. Mankind still required a propitiation. Okay, so 12 through or 11 through 22. And Jehovah said to me, rise up, go before the people, causing them to pull up stakes, that they may go in and possess the land which I swore to the fathers to give it to them. And this is what we find in the book of Numbers. And now, Israel, what has Jehovah your God asked of you, except to fear Jehovah your God, to walk in all his ways, and to love him, and to serve Jehovah your God with all your heart and with all your soul, to keep the commandments of Jehovah and his statutes, which I am commanding you today for your good. Behold, the heavens and the heaven of the heavens and the earth and all in it belong to Jehovah your God. Only Jehovah has delighted in your fathers to love them. And he chose their seed after them, which is Israel of that day, on you out of all the peoples as it is today. And you shall circumcise the foreskin of your heart, and you shall not harden your neck any more. For Jehovah your God, he is the God of gods and the Lord of lords, the great, the mighty, the fearful God, who does not lift up faces nor take a bribe. He executes justice for the fatherless and the widow, and loves the alien, to give to him food and clothing, something to consider. And you shall love the alien, which is a very interesting thing to say at this point. For you were aliens in the land of Egypt. You shall fear Jehovah your God. You shall serve him, and you shall cleave to him, and you shall swear by his name. He shall be your praise, and he shall be your God, who has done for you these great and fearful things which your eyes have seen. Your fathers went down to Egypt with 70 persons, and now Jehovah your God has made you as the stars of heavens for multitude. Okay, so the questions we have is, because of Moses' intercession and God's mercy, what were the people to do, and what do we learn from this? In other words, how does this foreshadow the dispensation of the Christ, which is what we live under? We don't live under this old law. We live under the dispensation that God handed down and that covenant that he created through Jesus, his son. So what do we learn from that? Well, I just said they were to wholly devote themselves to God, starting with fear, love, respect, obedience, and they were to become humbled before God. And that was an issue at the time. Even though they were slaves, they had issues with humility. Of course, by this time, they weren't slaves anymore. They were 40 years out of Egypt. And they were to extend the same love that God extended to them, to the aliens in the land, to other people with humble circumstances. These concepts apply to the Christian even more, since Jesus himself became the actual propitiation for sin. They were going to be learning a lot of laws about how to propitiate for their sins before God. Jesus did that so he could fulfill that law, so that mankind doesn't need to do it as long as they have faith in the Christ. So God personalizes his love through Jesus. And there are several main laws that we see in Deuteronomy that Jesus talks about, that are most important, that cover all the laws, as well as loving thy neighbor, that sort of thing. Jesus was God at exposing the intent of the law by not dwelling on the fringe contingency laws, like what happens if your cow gets out and ruins somebody's garden patch, then what are you to do? Or what if you accidentally kill somebody, then what happens? Jesus doesn't dwell on those contingency laws. He dwells on 2 or 3 main focus laws, which was to love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, love your neighbor. Those 2 were the most important, and that's what he said. And he also speaks about doing unto others as you would have them do unto you, which was a golden rule from philosophy and that sort of thing. And it really, those are the main things that the Christian should be focusing on. It's not about all the contingency things, and we'll get into a little bit about that as well. Okay, moving along. What else is to be the response of the people? And we find that in chapter 11, verse 1, where it says, "And you shall love Jehovah your God, and keep his charge, and his statutes, and his judgments, and his commandments all the days." And I keep saying this. Deuteronomy emphasizes obedience because it's actually almost in reverse. If you can train yourself and discipline yourself into obedience, God's love will be revealed to you. And this is something that we just don't get. We think we need to fix the heart first, and then we'll obey. And this is true. I would say that once the heart is fixed, that everything, and I've said this last week, I think it was, everything does fall into place, including obedience. But God understood that this was a stubborn people, maybe not all of them, but there was a large contingency of stubborn people. And he's just telling them first and foremost, if you're obeying what I'm saying, then you're going to be okay. And it should lead them to all these other things. And sometimes it did, as we see later in their history. Sometimes it didn't, and that absolutely happened. So they were to just love God with all their heart, mind, and soul. So we left off in verses 2 through 17, and we'll go ahead and read those right now. And know today, for I do not speak with your sons who have not known. So again, God is using very litigious sort of languages. He's saying, you are witnesses to these things. So, my covenant with you, is what he's saying without actually coming out and saying it. His covenant with this people is based on eyewitness accounts. It's not something that they have to learn, like in the beginning. It was this oral tradition that they were hearing and that sort of thing. This is something they actually saw and witnessed for themselves. And who have not seen the chastisement. This is a very long-running sentence because God has a lot to say about this clause in their covenant. Who have not seen the chastisement of Jehovah your God, his greatness, his mighty hand, and his stretched out arm, and his signs and his works which he did in the midst of Egypt to Pharaoh the king of Egypt and to all his land, and that which he had done to the army of Egypt, to its horses and to its chariots, when he caused the waters of the sea of reeds to flow over them as they pursued them, and Jehovah destroyed them to this day. And that which he has done to you in the wilderness until you came to this place, and that which he has done to Dathan and to Abram and the sons of Eliab, Reuben's son, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed them and their houses and their tents and all the living substance at their feet in the midst of all Israel, in a previous book. But your eyes see all the great work of Jehovah which he has done, and you shall keep all the commandments which I am commanding you today, so that you shall be strong and shall go in and possess the land to which you are crossing over to possess it, so that you may prolong your days in the land which Jehovah has sworn to your fathers to give to them and to their seed, a land flowing with milk and honey. For the land to which you are going to possess it is not as the land of Egypt, from where you came, where you sowed your seed and watered it with your foot as a garden of herbs. But the land which you are entering to possess it is a land of hills and valleys, drinking water from the rain of the heavens, a land which Jehovah your God cares for. The eyes of Jehovah your God are always on it, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And it shall be, if listening, you shall listen to my commands, which I command you today, to love your God, and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. And I will give the rain of your land in its season, and the early rain and the latter rain, and you may gather in your grain, your wine, and your oil. And I will give grass in your fields for your livestock, and you shall eat and be satisfied. Take heed to yourselves, that your heart not be deceived, and you turn aside and serve other gods. So here's all these good things, and then there's the warning again. That's how this book reads. That's how it's written. Do not bow down before them, and the anger of Jehovah will glow against you, and he will shut up the heavens, and there will be no rain, and the ground will not give her increase, and you will perish quickly from off the good land which Jehovah is giving you. So there's the warning. Again, God is saying, I'm going to be your God, but if you look for another God, it's over. That's really what this is about. This is a testimony about what they should know and what they should be doing. So, what were the people to see about God? Well, they were to see that God is the one taking care of them and the land. God says he's the one bringing the rain. They were to love Jehovah and to serve him with all their heart and their soul. God says that repeatedly, and he says it for a reason. He's giving them a point to grow to. This is where you should be going, and you have to understand. We have to understand that there are probably still a contingency of people who didn't quite understand this. And they were just looking for God to hand them everything. And that's not how God operates. Not today, not then. That's an important point. God is exhibiting his love and caring and only expecting the same in return. His warning is against idolatry, and it was easy to identify back then. Today, of course, idolatry takes on many other forms. Covetousness being one of them, which has always been an issue throughout all the ages, where people look at things as their God. And today we see all sorts of people turning people into gods. They turn celebrities and people who speak out against God. Those become the new gods. Scientists are gods because, and I only say this because not because they worship them in the typical sense, but people will put all of their trust into them. And this is what God is warning against. Things become new religions. We see in the political atmosphere today that a lot of what happens in the political world is basically a new religion. You either conform to it or you are judged by it. God is the one who makes them strong, and many were eyewitnesses to his power. God has a great love for the land as well as the people, and this is all part of the promises that Moses reiterates and reiterates throughout his message here. Okay, so what did some of the other students have to say about what is going on in this chapter? One of the participants noted that Aaron made a great sin when he disobeyed God and made the golden calf. And even though he did that, it's just that was a grievous thing to do. Here's your priest, and he's making an idol. Yet God didn't kill him, and the priesthood continued on through the Levite clan or tribe, and so the assumption here is that God forgave him, and that is very. I would agree with that. God did forgive him because God wanted to kill him, and it was only through Moses' intercession that God stayed that execution. However, when we talk about God reasoning with mankind and God reasoning with Moses, there are other things to think about. This pointed to the Christian dispensation when we become part of the priesthood as well. I just wanted to bring that out, that in the Christian dispensation, which is what we live under, we are all the priests representing God. There are no high priests. There are no, there's nobody who's higher than anybody else. We come to this understanding that everybody is the same before God. He is impartial. And that's an important thing to remember when it comes to Christianity. Another person said, Moses reasoning with God. It feels weird to read this, that, here's Moses telling God what to do, but that's not the case. And this participant said, it's important to understand that we are not only under God as, he's our king, but he's also our father, and he's willing to listen to us, which encourages us to pray, encourages us to sing to him, encourages us to speak to him, and bring our problems to him, and bring our innermost thoughts to him, because he already knows him. And that's an excellent point. He's willing to listen. Also, somebody brought up the point that God's glory is just. You know, we can't think for one second that why does God is this tyrant? Who is he thinking that we need to fear him and respect him and love him? God is who he is, and that's just something that every human has to come to, that understanding that his glory, the glory that he's telling he deserves, he doesn't have this great big unreasonable ego. He's just saying, you need to understand my place and understand your place with me. And God brings those 10 commandments, which opens this avenue of mercy, which is showing the people that God's mercy and his just ways. And it is a way for man to relate to him, and we must respect that. Another person said God's position, he is showing mercy, which indicates there is a way back to God. And wow, think about that. Here is God who is just, and we deserve certain justice against us, but God is showing a way back to him into his mercy and his graciousness. And that is even more exemplified in the Christian dispensation. God affords us mercy. Another person said, we are to love everyone, including the alien. We are to remember this because we are all, in a sense, aliens at one time of God. And it is only because of the Christ that we can understand the mercy and the open door, as it was said, that God leaves for us back to him. Sometimes it's not easy, but we have to understand this. We have to love everyone because everyone belongs to God. We cannot separate faith from obedience to argue a position. God is not a cold list of rules, but he does look for obedience in our lives. It's a requirement. And this is something we discuss in depth, that in today's religious world, people want to cut out certain parts and say you only have to believe to be saved. And they try to isolate the salvation part of it to say you don't have to obey. But God does not dispense that teaching in the New Testament like that at all. Whenever you see the people being led to faith, you see obedience afterward. And that is what God looks for. When you go to Revelation, he states in no uncertain terms that we will be judged according to our deeds. And when you look at James doesn't separate out faith and works. Those things are stuck together, and they're there for a reason. It's for us to exhibit our faith before God and before the world. That is a requirement. That just doesn't go away. So whenever, and I only say this because there is a lot of argument about those things, whatever the works may be. People say, well, we're not saved by works. Well, I wouldn't say okay to that, but I would say, well, if that's the case, are you saying that we don't have to work? Because if you're not working and obeying God, then you're not in him. That's what the New Testament teaches. Anyway, I don't want to get too far into it. That's an entire study of its in and of itself. And I would just say, if you find people trying to separate those things, I would be cautious, first of all, and I would note whatever scriptures are being are taught and go study them for yourselves. Because when you look at the New Testament Christian, obedience is one of the biggest foundational things in there. Some people disobeyed and they were killed on the spot for it in the beginnings of Christianity. So if obedience isn't a big deal, why would that happen? Okay, enough. About that very long sentence where God talks about all the things that they've seen, all the things that they witness. This is one of our participants said it's a flood of information, like in Ephesians, in order to emphasize God's bounty of evidences here. And it's like, and I added to that, that is, it's kind of like a legal clause in the covenant that God is establishing. You've seen this. You better take care of these things. So another person noted that in relation to God watering the land and taking care of the land, it was a direct assault against some of the gods, at least one god in particular, in the land that the other people were worshiping, which was Baal, who to them was the god who would control the rain and everything. And this participant said God is absolutely attacking these other gods, and he's putting in their minds that the thought that these other gods are doing this, don't go there, because that's not the truth. And that is absolutely true. And if you go to our website, you'll find a series of the 10 plagues, and Danny does a really good job of showing how it is that God, through the 10 plagues, was actually attacking the other gods in Egypt. And their belief was that their gods were, the gods to worship, and God is actually attacking each one of those. Okay, so that wraps up the study for last Sunday. If you need to back into anything else, in the introduction or anything like that, or if you have questions or anything, you'll find that at our YouTube, our Facebook, or our own Santee Church of Christ websites, and you can contact us through there, and we'll leave the description of where to find us at the end of this video. Thank you, and may God continue to bless us always, and may God bless you as well. Thank you.